channel, welcome back to another video. I'm Jessie E. This is Ravenclaw, and you're watching Today I am back with another installment of my monthly bookish news video. These are my favorite videos to film on my channel, and I'm so excited to be bringing you all of the news that happened in March as well as what we can expect in April. I basically wrap up all of the bookish events that have taken place in the previous month, and then I also give you the details on the TV show adaptations, the bookish movie releases, and of course all of the fantastic new bookish releases that you can expect to see in the current month. So as usual, there is going to be timestamps in the description box below. If you're just here for the bookish TV shows and movie adaptations, you can just skip ahead to that. Or you can just hang out with me the entire time because I think this whole video is gonna be lit. I have so much news to share. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. To kick off our March news, on March 3rd, Netflix announced a live-action 10-episode series of The Babysitter's Club. Now, I don't know if kids today are reading The Babysitter's Club, but these books were everywhere when I was growing up. If you were a kid or a teen reader like me, then you were probably reading The Babysitter's Club, and you probably had a favorite babysitter. Mine, who, of course, was none other than Claudia. I keep seeing conflicting things about this live action series, about when it's going to actually finally be released, so I'm not able to give you a release date, but I do know that it's going to be happening sooner rather than later, and I cannot wait to see it. I'm also really hoping that somebody is going to host a readathon of the Babysitter's Club books because I just would love to revisit that world. Also in TV series adaptations, beloved author Shannon McGuire dropped on her Twitter that the Wayward Children series is being adapted for TV. I personally haven't read this series, it's on my TBR, but it won a Hugo Award in 2017, and all I really know about it is it's about children who are able to visit otherworldly realms, and in these realms they're either monsters or heroes, and the series is about these children who are living in a boarding school, and in their boarding school they have to kind of be reintegrated into society. But terror strikes when the kids start being murdered by an unknown killer one by one. This series sounds dark and magical, and everybody is obsessed with it, so I cannot wait to sink my teeth into it. The thing that's really pumping me up about the TV show adaptation is that Joe Tracy's is going to be on board. And if you're not familiar with that name, he is responsible for the adaptation of the series of Unfortunate Events on Netflix by Lemony Snicket. And honestly, the series of Unfortunate Events adaptation on Netflix is one of the best adaptations that I've ever seen of a children's book. So I'm really excited to see what Joe does with the Wayward Children series. Another miniseries that was solidified on March 3rd is none other than the book Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. For those of you who haven't read Americana, this was an amazing book, one of the best books that I've ever read. It came out in around 2012, 2013, and it told the story of Ifemelu and Obinze, who were two young individuals living in Lagos, Nigeria. One of them ends up moving to America, and the other one ends up kind of trapped in London. It's basically the story of their immigration and also their coming of age, their growing up, the experiences that they have in both of these places, and their attempts to get back to one another. It honestly is just a truly remarkable, heartwarming story that I encourage everybody to read. But what really pumps me up about the TV show adaptation is that Lupita Nyong'o has signed up, as well as Danai Gurira. These two have already worked together on the set of Black Panther, so we already know that they have a great working relationship. They have amazing on-screen chemistry, and I cannot wait to see the life that they bring to these characters. Wrapping up our TV news, I wanted to talk about beloved Game of Thrones actress Emilia Clarke because she came out last month as having experienced two very life-threatening brain aneurysms. These aneurysms resulted in her having a stroke and then 2 brain surgeries, and she recently shared photos of her post-brain surgery and talked about how it was none other than Daenerys Stormborn that got her through the experience. When asked about it, she said, and I quote, "You go on set and you play a badass and you walk through fire, and that became the thing that saved me from considering my own mortality." Now, I'm filming this on April 14th, the day that season 8 of Game of Thrones drops. I just found this so beautiful because Daenerys is a character that has touched many of our hearts. A lot of us are rooting for her to win the Iron Throne. But it's also really beautiful to know that she has literally saved Emilia Clarke's life, and that Emilia Clarke has a real tie to Daenerys' character. Daenerys literally helped her get through quite possibly one of the darkest times of this young actress's life. And it just honestly gave me chills because I can't imagine how hard it would have been on Amelia's family, on Game of Thrones fans, pretty much the entire world if she had passed away as a result of these aneurysms, and I'm so glad that she made it through. Speaking of incredibly badass female characters, Natasha Nung, the author of Girls of Paper and Fire, finally dropped the cover for Girls of Storm and Shadow. And it's amazing. Girls of Storm and Shadow comes out, I believe, on November 5th, and I'm praying that the book is just as dark and moody and angry as the cover suggests it is. Last month in March, we found out that the sequel to the wildly successful movie Maleficent was getting its date moved up from May 29, 2020 to October 18th of 2019. Honestly, Angelina's acting has never been so precise and so impactful for me personally, besides when she was playing Maleficent's character, and I'm so excited to see the second movie. I cannot wait for it. We also found out that Idris Elba is going to be replacing Will Smith in Suicide Squad #2. This is something that's been speculated upon for a little while, but it was actually confirmed last month, and I have a lot of feelings about this. The only reason that that movie worked the way that it did, in my opinion, is because Will Smith was really pulling that cast together. And I'm not saying the other actors didn't do amazing jobs with their roles, but I think it's not a secret that the writing on that film just simply wasn't the greatest, and I really think that Deadshot's character is largely responsible for the movie even having the modicum of success that it did have. And that's largely in part of Will Smith's portrayal of Deadshot. But on the flip side, Idris Elba does a fantastic job of playing broody, moody characters.
Don't you ever touch me again. Two, don't you ever touch me again.
He has less of a comedic relief element that Will Smith has, but more of a intense and mysterious on-screen presence. So I'm really excited and interested, and also a little apprehensive to see the character switch and how that impacts and affects the movie. Speaking of beloved DC characters, we also got confirmation that Joaquin Phoenix is going to be starring in the character study of the Joker. The Joker is finally getting his own movie, his own backstory, and it's going to be released on October 4th. And I think that we can all pretty much agree that there have been some really fantastic portrayals of the Joker, but nobody even comes close to Heath Ledger's performance in 2008. And that's just my own personal opinion. You can disagree with me if you want, but that movie gave me chills. I saw it 7 times in theaters. I watch it once every 3 months, pretty much. I'm obsessed with the movie. I have been ever since it's come out. And it's largely because of Heath and the amazing job, the depth and the layer that he brings to that character. I always want to support other actors who want to take up the mantle of very difficult characters to touch, but it's been really hard for me to see anybody else try and portray the Joker, Jared Leto. Ooh. I think that Joaquin Phoenix is going to do an amazing job. He's an incredible actor, and I honestly think that if anybody's going to portray the Joker, it should be him.
What's so funny? Just freak.
But I want to know what you guys think. Is there somebody else that you think is better or best suited to take up the mantle of the Joker? Let me know in the comment section down below because I would love to hear your thoughts. 2 more pieces of March news before we move on to April book releases, movies, TV show adaptations, and the like. On March 20th, we found out that Justin A. Reynolds' beloved book, Opposite of Always, has been picked up by Paramount. Paramount has officially closed a deal securing the rights to this book. And I think it's amazing considering that this book hasn't been on the market for more than a few months before a movie deal was secured. Most of the things that I've heard about The Opposite of Always has been positive, but not everything. I haven't read it yet myself, and I am excited to check it out. It's basically the story of a young man who meets a girl named Kate at a party, and he falls in love with her, but Kate dies, and he has to keep going through time in order to save her. I think I pretty much fell in love with movies and books that have a time travel element after watching The Butterfly Effect, and also after reading and watching The Time Traveler's Wife when I was younger. So I'm excited to see at the very least the adaptation of this book, even if I don't end up reading it myself. The last thing I'm going to talk about for March is that Disney's acquisition of Fox took place on March 20th. This is important because Disney has officially become the world's biggest entertainment company. It took $71.3 billion to make this deal possible. And I'm not exactly sure how this is going to affect the movie, the TV show industry. So if you have any thoughts, I would love to hear it. Now it is time. It is finally time for us to talk about the book releases that are happening this month in April. Usually I touch on about 4 or 5 books that are coming out for the current month, but This month I'm going to be talking about 18 books. In order to let y'all know which of these books I'm most excited for, I've developed two labels. The first label is going to be highly excited. So if I say I'm highly excited about a book, it means that I'm extremely prioritizing it. If I say that I am extremely excited about a book, then that's absolutely at the top of my TBR and I'm gonna read it as soon as I can get my hands on it. If I don't give it a label, I'm still excited about it. I will be discussing these books by the date of their release. This list includes thrillers, nonfiction, sci-fi, contemporaries, literally everything possible. There's definitely a chance that there's gonna be a book in this list that you are gonna wanna put on your TBR. Book number 1 is Affair of the Falcons by Melissa Rivero, and it comes out on April 2nd. Based on the synopsis, I have given this book the ranking of highly excited. It tells the story of Ana and her family who flee political unrest in Peru and move to New York City in the 1990s. But Anna gets in bed with loan sharks and she really struggles to fit in and protect her family in New York City. She starts to wonder if she and her family aren't actually better off in the land that they came from. Lovely Little Things by Maureen Connolly came out on April 2nd, and I have given it the title of Extremely Excited. This is a thriller about Claire, who is a hardworking mother of 2 children and also a medical resident. But Claire has allergies and she feels an allergy attack coming on, but she decides to get her kids in the car and drive them to daycare anyway because she can't miss her work shift. But unfortunately, she passes out, and when she wakes up, the kids are gone from the vehicle. The police have no leads, there's an unreliable witness, and her marriage has already been rocky for quite some time. This book is played out in multiple narratives that are designed to look at how the lives of all of these people intersect. And what really caught my eye about this book, besides the fact that the synopsis sounds amazing, is the reviews on Goodreads. This book has gotten amazing reviews on Goodreads, and I'm so excited to get my hands on it. Plus, I want to get back into reading thrillers. I'm also really pumped about The Wicked Saints by Emily Duncan, which came out on April 2nd. This book follows 3 characters, a girl who can talk to gods, a mistrustful prince, and a boy with a secret, all who have to overthrow a king. This is the first installment of a series that promises lots of blood and gore and death. And I'm excited for it, but it's gotten pretty horrible ratings, so it's not very high on my TBR. On April 2nd, Khalif Fajardo Anstine released a book titled Sabrina and Corina. This is an anthology of stories about friendship, familialhood, and homeland, each carried by a cast of Latinas with indigenous roots. It's a wildfire of stories that center around cultural rituals, gentrification, and women's issues. But I'm excited to see how these issues are tackled from an indigenous Latinx lens. On April 2nd, Danny McClain released a book titled We Live for the We. It's a nonfiction book about the political power of Black motherhood, written by a Black woman who has long since provided social commentary on reproductive justice, race, and political policy. She's also a first-time mother, so this book is about her experience with motherhood, her teachings, her insecurities about being a mother, but also the joy that it is to be a parent. Then we have Trust Exercise, which was released by Susan Choi on April 9th. Trust Exercise takes place in the 1980s in a very competitive high school where 2 students fall in love, but their acting teacher manipulates and toys with their emotions for one another, helping to create a psychologically distortive novel about the line between fiction and reality, adolescenthood, and the influence of adults on young minds. Also, Trust Exercise has gotten amazing ratings. It's all over Bookstagram, and I'm just excited to form my own opinion about it. Another book that has been incredibly hyped on Instagram is Notes from a Young Black Chef by Kwame Onwuachi, and that came out on April 9th. This book I'm giving the title of Highly Excited. It is the memoir of a Black young chef who completed Top Chef, cooked at the White House, and opened and closed a wildly successful restaurant all by the time he was 27 years old. My mother was actually a chef. She's an amazing cook, and I grew up in kitchens, in restaurants, and around people that have a lot of culinary talent. Whenever my mother couldn't afford a babysitter, she would bring me with her to work, and I would sit in the back of the house in office and read books and annoy the cooks. And so some of my fondest memories are of restaurants, and I'm just really excited to read a memoir of such a wildly successful young chef. Then we have In the Neighborhood of True on April 9th, and this book, I'm definitely giving the title of Highly Excited. It's way at the top of my TBR. In 1958, Ruth's Jewish family immigrates to the south of the United States. In order to fit in with the blonde debutantes and to avoid the wrath of the KKK, Ruth decides to pretend that she is a young white woman. And of course, during this ruse, she falls in love with the richest, most celebrated white boy in the town, and she gets introduced and welcomed into all of these very white elite social circles. But when violent attacks arise in the city, Ruth finds that she needs to take a side. So I'm really excited. First of all, I love historical fiction. I know a lot of people don't dig it, but I think when a book is really set in another decade, there's a lot of world building and attention and time that goes into that story, a lot of detail, and I love that. I love world building in books. I love history in books, and I'm also very intrigued by the struggle of having to pretend to be white, to pretend to be something that you're not in order to survive in a climate that is hostile to your identity, regardless of whatever that identity is. Books that feature that struggle is something that are often books that I find very fascinating probably because like I balance and juggle multiple identities with me being Black and Mexican and being queer and being non-binary. And there are a lot of situations in which I have to pretend or to downplay the fact that I'm queer, or to pretend that I'm not non-binary in order to be accepted, in order to kind of fit in and not to deal with hostilities of people that have ignorance and prejudice. So I'm really excited for this book. I'm excited for the Jewish representation, but also like I've always been fascinated with debutantes and the belles of the ball and all that fun stuff, so I can't wait for that element too. Nama by Sarah Blake came out on April 9th, and I'm giving this book the title of Highly Excited. But it's basically the retelling of the Great Flood from the perspective of Noah's wife, Nama. I love retellings of major historical events from the perspective of the women, just because we so often fail to give women a voice in our history. I just read The Only Woman in the Room, and at the end of that book there was an amazing quote about how we write women out of history. Hold on, I'm gonna go get the book. I'm gonna read the quote to you. Unless we begin to view historical women through a broader, more inclusive lens and rewrite them back into the narrative, we will continue to view the past more restrictively than it likely was, and we risk carrying those perspectives over into the present. We see women in history as these submissive creatures who are just in the background, and we don't really realize or think about the many, the various, the intense contributions that these women actually did give to history. And as a result, we tend to think of women in the present as not being able to contribute to the present. The next book is by two authors. It is called Star World, and it is by Audrey Coulthurst and Paula Gardner, and this book comes out on April 16th. It's a YA contemporary about two girls who had extremely stressful and difficult home lives. They begin to text each other, and in their text messages they create this world called Star World where they can truly be themselves. It contains representation for queer folks, people that are adopted, adoptees, and also people with mental illness and developmental disabilities. Then we have Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, which comes out on April 16, and I am extremely excited. This thriller is by a South Korean author and has an Asian main character, and it's about two scientists who create an experimental medical treatment device, but that device explodes and it kills two people that are receiving treatment. It then leads to a dramatic murder trial that rocks this very sleepy town in Virginia where they live. No one really knows what caused the explosion. Were the two students just hoping for an insurance payout, or was it deliberate murder? It's a courtroom drama that intersects with Korean identity and psychotherapy. And we got 6 more books before we move on to TV show adaptations. S.J. Gosley releases How Not to Ask a Boy to Prom on April 23rd. It's a young adult romantic comedy about two boys who pretend to date. I'm basically just excited about seeing the fake dating trope in a queer lens. That's something that I haven't seen before, and I'm super pumped about it. I have also heard that this book is freaking hilarious. Like, if you look at the Goodreads reviews, everybody's saying how funny it is. Then we have Tiger at Midnight #1, which is part of a series, and that book gets released on April 23rd by Swati Teerdala. This is definitely in my top 5 out of all of the books on this TBR. It's inspired by ancient Indian history and Hindu mythology. We're finally getting an Own Voices young adult fantasy about a legendary female assassin and a male soldier who's been a soldier since childhood, who have to come together in order to assassinate the world's most powerful and evil general. So this book is supposed to feature a lot of incredibly heated banter, the moral grays of war, and also 2 incredibly vivid characters. Personally, books that have a lot of heated banter and back-to-back, as well as a big ethical component, are some of my favorite books to read, and I really like when the difficulties of war is represented in a way that isn't just glory, because war is a very nuanced issue. We also have Fumbled by Alexa Martin, which I am highly excited about. Fumbled is actually book number 2. I don't know what the series is called, but it follows a young single mother who works at a nightclub who is learning how to be a good mom, but also how not to lose herself. She meets basically an NFL playboy, and they kind of go on this like wild romance. I'm excited because it's a contemporary, it has a Black main character, it's got some romance in it, and you guys know know I've been talking a lot about how I just need more fluffy books with Black people. I'm just super over reading all these books where Black people are like slaves and suffering. I'm over it. You know, it's like I've done that for the last 15 years of my life and I'm ready for some fluff and some fun and some adventure. So I have to go read book number 1 of this series and then I'll be ready for book 2. And then on April 23rd, we also have This Place, 150 Years Retold. It's a graphic novel that explores the last 150 years, but through the lens of Indigenous people who have survived the apocalypse. This book is supposed to have a lot of psychic battles, magical realism, and serial killers. I'm excited. And the cover is so beautiful. It's so gorgeous. 2 more books to go. The first one is Walking on the Ceiling, and that comes out on April 30th by author Aysegul Salvas, whose name I probably just butchered. When her mother dies, Nunu moves to Paris from Istanbul, and she meets this very eccentric writer, and they begin to have a very eccentric friendship. So this writer is very interested in Nunu and is asking her about her life story, and she's telling him about it. But she adds a lot of flourish, and the story is basically about how she has manufactured this truth about herself and her family in order to protect herself from the events that actually happened. And this is a synopsis that is like kind of boring on face value, but I'm really excited. I have a feeling that this book is going to be very character driven, and I love a good character driven story, and I'm excited about it. And the very last book that I'm going to talk about is What My Mother and I Don't Talk About. That comes out on April 30th. The subtitle of this book is 15 Writers Break the Silence, and it's about these 15 writers who've written essays about the relationships that they have with their mother. And this book was kind of created because one of the authors put an essay out there about how stepfather abusing her really affected her relationship with her mother. And this essay went viral. I haven't read it myself, but it's in the book. And then a bunch of other authors kind of signed on to make this a project. And this is going to be the result. Oh my God, that was a lot of freaking books, you guys. Okay, I'm going to blow through the TV show and movie adaptations so I can wrap up this video because I think it's gonna be like an hour long and I don't think anybody wants to see that much of bow ties and books. So it goes without saying that today is April 14th, which means Game of Thrones is dropping. You already know who I'm rooting for. Yeah, this guy right here. This guy right here. I'm so excited, you guys. I'm so excited. I have some very Game of Thrones inspired things coming up on this channel in April. So for my Game of Thrones for my Game of Thrones fans, stick around or unfollow because I can't speak. Okay. Jordan Peele, who is probably my favorite director or writer on the scene right now, is adapting the Twilight Zone series, and that just got released on CBS. I don't think I've really talked about this on this channel, but the Twilight Zone is one of my favorite TV shows. It always has been. As a kid, those episodes really creeps me out and they stuck with me, and I'm rewatching them as an adult. I love them and I cannot wait to see what Jordan Peele does with the Twilight Zone.
This is real.
So we've got 5 movies to talk about before I close off this video. The first movie is The Best of Enemies, which dropped on April 5th. This is a movie that I've been super excited about. It's based off of a book, and it stars none other than Taraji P. Henson, who is just like the finest woman who's ever lived. I swear, she's so pretty. It's about this very outspoken civil rights leader in the 70s and this KKK leader who have to come together over the issue of desegregating schools. And then we have the Shazam movie, which also came out on April 5th. I haven't seen it yet. Let me know if you, please let me know, those of you who've seen it, if it's worth going to see, because the trailer looked a little rough, but who doesn't love Shazam? Pet Sematary also came out on April 5th. It's based off of the book by Stephen King. I loved the movie when I was younger. I was one of those weird kids that was allowed to watch scary movies, which is a part of, like, that's how I fell in love with Silence of the Lambs, because I was watching that with my mother when I was very young. I've always loved scary movies, and Pet Sematary was one of those movies that really gave me the creeps. I haven't read the book yet. I'm excited to see this newest adaptation though. I loved all of the imagery that we got in the trailer. So if you've seen this movie, please let me know what you thought of it. And let me know if you've read the book and how it compares to the book. And then 2 days ago, the movie After got released on April 12th. And I honestly want to go see it just because of the trailer. Do you guys remember the overly dramatic, cringy trailer of the two like making out in the water?
Nothing could ever change the way that I feel about you.
And everybody on Twitter was freaking out about it. I haven't read the book, don't know if I'm gonna read the book, don't know if I wanna read the book, but I know a lot of you guys read it, loved it, are super pumped for the movie, so I would love to hear your thoughts on this too. And if you think that I would actually like the book, let me know. And then last but not least, On April 26th, Endgame comes out. In some places, tickets are selling for this movie for $1,000. If I didn't have a crushing amount of student loan debt, I might be one of them. But yeah, the movie's gonna be over 3 hours long. I'm gonna have literally a backpack of snacks. I might have somebody insert a catheter so that I don't have to get up and go to the bathroom. That is gonna wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed all of the bookish news and releases. Stay sharp, and I'll see you in my next video.